Mother and Sister Anna, Father Joseph Mary, and Brother Indigo, brothers and sisters, Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Yeah, Christ is truly risen. He's risen indeed. It's the resurrection of the Lord that we continue to celebrate in this Easter season. And this delightful passage of the road to Emmaus gives us a chance to understand perhaps a little bit more deeply the connection between the Sacred Heart of Jesus and that heart in what we're doing now, or in the reception of the Holy Eucharist. Probably one of the best connections in current theological literature on the connection between Jesus and his Sacred Heart and the Eucharist is Mother Adela's works on the Eucharist, where we see that deep bond of love between Christ crucified, Christ risen, and Christ Eucharistic. And these disciples on the road to Emmaus experience something stirred within us. Were not our hearts burning within us as he broke open the scriptures to us or explained to us the scriptures? And this encounter with Jesus is pretty much the hallmark of the Christian proposal, the Christian adventure, the Christian truth, what God did in Jesus Christ, and the connection between us as those who are created by God and those who are redeemed by God. What if you could choose where you live from? For example, people might ask you, where are you from? Oh, I'm from this country or that city. Oh, we can tell by your accent that you're from here or there. They could tell that Peter was a Galilean because of his accent. But what if you could choose where you were from? Like where you lived from? Where would you choose to live from? Or what if you could choose your parents in that as well? Who would you choose your parents to be? This dynamic that we live from is really intriguing to think about, and I don't want to get too heady with it, but it is extremely important. Recognizing that we are so deeply conditioned by things and people around us. The way we act, the way we talk, the way we think, the way we perceive the world, the way we interpret the world, all of that is somewhat imparted into us. This last week I've been pondering this idea, what if I lived from the Immaculate Heart of Mary? What if the Immaculate Heart of Mary became where I was from? And the Immaculate Heart of Mary led me to the heart of Jesus. And what if I was from the two hearts, from the Immaculate Heart and the Sacred Heart? How different would I speak? How different would I feel? How different would I interpret the world and interact with the world? The early church lived from the crucifixion and the resurrection. And they experienced life flowing from the pierced heart of Jesus. They experienced life flowing from the blood and water from the pierced heart of Jesus on the cross. And they experienced life from the risen Jesus. Of course, I'm sure gathered and taught and mothered by Our Lady. Life became very different. They just weren't from Galilee or Jerusalem, or they weren't just a pagan convert or a Jewish convert. They weren't from Tyre only. There was something they shared. They had experienced Jesus. And Jesus invited them into him and said, begin here. You are now from here. You are grafted into me. This is your home. When people say, where are you from? I am from the heart of Jesus. That's my home. That's where I'm from. The disciples on the road to Emmaus experienced the presence of Jesus in the explanation of the Word, explaining God's amazing salvation plan throughout salvation history, leading to Jesus. And they experienced him in the breaking of the bread. Their eyes were opened. This is what we're praying for, I think, in the Eucharistic revival, that our eyes would be open and we would see him in the Eucharist. We would see the Lord crucified and risen in the Eucharist. That we would be those disciples on the road to Emmaus, and Christ would burn in our hearts, and we would say, I saw him in the breaking of the bread. Who did you see? I saw Christ crucified and risen. I saw Jesus in the breaking of the bread. And St. Paul's kind of unpacking of the Christian experience, he really has some engaging language that is thought-provoking and question-provoking as well. He describes something along the lines of being a new creation, being a new man or a new woman. And Jesus in his own teaching speaks in somewhat cryptic language about being born again. Where is the new man and the new woman born again? Where is the home of the believer? Where are we from? What forms our identity? What forms our mission? What forms how we see and live in the world? Where are you from? In a spirit of division, Satan says, oh, you're from here, so therefore I don't like you. You're from there. We don't like you. The early church had a lot of healing to do as the Roman soldiers and the Jewish people who converted tried to work out what it meant to be in Jesus and to have the same home, to be from the same place, and to say, you are my brother, you are my sister. We have the same family. We have the same home. This is a deep part of the fruit of the gospel, which Mother so wonderfully connected to St. Paul in preaching Christ crucified. Because the heart of the gospel is love. And we need that place to be from. We need to be from love. And we need to be for love. Because that's the deeper truth of each one of us. That is the deeper truth. Not so much who your parents are, or what country you were born in, or what language you speak, or what accent you grew up with. Yes, I mean, all of that's important and real. But the deeper truth is that we're from God. My origin is in God. Your origin is in God. And we, like the early church, can leave home every day into our missions, knowing that our home is the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Eucharistic pierced and risen heart of Jesus. Home is often connected to where do you lay your head? Where do you rest? Where does life come to you? I think what the early church came to discover is that something new has happened in the Lord Jesus. And that something new is that we have a place to lay our head. And this not the spirituality of the Gospel of John, where John invites us into the experience of the beloved disciple, where we enter into that, and our hearts burn with love like those in Emmaus, or we rest in the heart of Jesus, and we say, here is my home. Here is where Father and Mother are. Here is where I am from. Here is where I belong. I want to be from here. I want to be from the heart of Mary and the heart of Jesus. Having a home in the heart of Mary is not cheap. It's an expensive home. It's very nice. But somebody else bought it for us. Jesus paid the price. And Mary shared in that, so that her maternity could be given deeply connected to the crucifixion of Jesus. And so we have that home. In a certain sense, I think a lot of people, when they experience the grace of the gospel, the experience of love crucified and love risen, when they're entering into this and saying, what does this mean now? What does this mean about my past sins? What does this mean about my future? What does this mean about my life? What's going on? Some people will describe it as learning to live for the first time. Learning to live for the first time. This is the life of God. This is the divine life within us. What if you could just simply, not just totally disconnecting from the past, but what if you could wake up and say, I can begin again. I can begin again. What if Christ crucified means something to you in your life? What if Christ crucified gives you a new home for your heart and for your mind? Well, then our hearts will burn within us as we break open the Word, and our hearts will burn within us because we will recognize Jesus in the breaking of the bread. And we will have a new home, a home in the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And from there, we can proclaim with love, with joy, with tenacity, Christ is risen. Christ is risen. The Lord is triumphant. Love has triumphed. Christ is truly risen.